Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, this is going to be the first of a series of videos that I'm going to be doing. And this series of videos is something that I think, based on what people have watched on my channel and then what people have suggested, Patreon, other stuff. I wanted to cover a topic that I don't think has really been broken down in a really interesting or useful way yet, in a video format, let's say. And that is a series that I'm basically calling like how to become a competitive Pokemon player. I don't know the exact name for it yet, but basically it's what I'm internally, for me, calling my Get Good series. And the idea is, how can you as a player who has, some successes, some failures, but overall you want to get better at the game, what are the principles that you need to learn and ways that you can change how you play? Not necessarily the specific decks, it's not really about that, but the ways that you can play to perform better consistently. That's, I think, the key challenge there is, myself included. Sometimes you'll go and you'll have a great day. Sometimes you'll go and you'll be like, I have no idea why I was so bad tonight. Sometimes it's luck. So I think that's another aspect to always keep in mind, is there's always a little bit of luck with this game. But the reason the top players are the top players is they do very well, very consistently. So this first episode 1, is going to be all about what I'm calling knowledge.
Knowledge.
What do I mean by knowledge, right? Broadly speaking, I think before you sit down in front of an opponent, you need to have a deep knowledge of your deck, your opponent's deck, the meta, all of these different things, right? So knowing that you need to know things, let's start off with the first principle, right? Which is you need to know your deck. And if possible, especially going into a big event like a regionals, you should be able to recite every single card in your deck by memory. And I'm going to just go through an example here. This is early in the Sword and Shield format, so depending on when you're watching this, this deck might be trash. I don't know. But I'm using this as an example. So let's cut on over and I will go through this deck by memory. I'll sort out all the cards. It'll be kind of boring, and I might just start talking about other stuff while I do this. But knowing your deck is critical to success. You have to know exactly what cards you have in deck so that at any point during the game, you can know what you have access to, what's in your prizes, and know all of your outs, as they say. So as I said before, this deck is a Zacian deck. It's a Zacian hybrid deck. I think that I have, let's see about this deck. I have 3 Zacian Vs in this deck. So check, 3 Zacian Vs in the deck. The next thing is I have 2 ADPs in the deck. Two ADPs. And then my other core attacker, so to speak, is going to be Lucario Melmetal. I just have 1 Lucario Melmetal. Now, outside of those main cards, I have 3 Jirachis as a support. 3 Jirachis and no more. All right, in terms of the tech cards I have in here, I have an Absol. I have a Wobbuffet, the one with the Prism Star blocking ability. I have a Duskmane Necrozma. And I have an Oranguru with the new Sword and Shield Oranguru, and a Fion. Any other Pokemon in here? No, okay, good. So that's all my Pokemon. I was able to name them all from memory. Check. So the next thing I'm gonna start naming are my supporter line. I have 3 Professor's Research, 4 Marnie, 1 Mallow and Lana, 1 Cynthia and Caitlin, and 1 Guzma and Hala. Boom. Check. I was correct. I have the exact count of supporters that I thought I had. Now let's go into items. I have 4 quick balls. I believe 2 tag calls. and 4 metal saucers. Let's just start there. So, 4 saucers, 4 quick balls, 2 tag calls. All right, and now I have 4 switch, 2 escape boards, and 4 switch, 2 escape board, 1 great catcher, 2 Pokemon catcher. Let's go there. There we go. So 4 switch, 2 escape board, great catcher, Pokemon catcher. I should have 3 metal frying pans, and 2 chaotic swells in this deck as well. Okay. That should be the end of my items or any of those. I have 10 metal energy and 2 aurora energy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Boom. All right. So, as you can see, I knew exactly what my deck should contain card for card, so that when I actually go into a tournament and I'm like, okay, how many things have I used? What's probably in my deck? I do a deck search. In the tournament, I should know exactly what my counts are. And then I could potentially know exactly what my prizes are if I just count through my cards early in the game. So I know that thing was fairly boring. I'm not gonna sort a bunch of cards again right now, but that was just an example of knowing your deck. So for you, know your deck inside and out, know every single card in there if you can. I think that's a critical component to getting better. The next thing about knowledge, right, is knowing the meta. Now, when I say meta, there's really 2 types of meta. You have your local meta, and you have your national meta or regional level meta. Basically, a local meta is everyone in your area that's probably going to be competing at a challenge or a cup. What kind of decks do they seem to like? Every area has slight nuances, right? There's going to be those decks that every area is going to have. ADPs, Zacians, I don't know. It could be anything when you're watching this video. But there's also certain players who like to play certain kinds of decks, and those might be a little bit more popular. And that means that decks that counter that are a little bit more popular. So that's the difference between a local meta and then a national meta is really just what are the decks you're most likely to encounter at a tournament of hundreds of players, right? I think knowing that, like, okay, well, the decks that have performed consistently well at lots of cups and tournaments are probably going to be the decks that show up in numbers to a big regional event. In terms of resources that you can use, there's things like Limitless. I would encourage you to go onto Limitless, look through past regional events, see what people have played, and then also another resource is Facebook. I think Burbank City, the Hey Fonte 2 group, if that's what you're into, those are 2 great resources where people will post results from cups. What's another? I think does Limitless have a Facebook page as well that does cup results now? Anyways, yeah, just keep up on Facebook and Limitless with the meta. Follow other creators. They'll talk about the meta. Basically, what kind of videos are people putting out too? That's going to be a good idea of what the meta is for competitive Pokemon. I will say, do not rely on PTCGO to tell you what any meta is going to be. Pokemon the card game online is not a good resource for understanding how your deck is going to perform or what the meta is going to be. You will certainly face meta decks. You will certainly get a brief sense of what your deck could do. But there's so many other random decks that people are not going to ever bring to a tournament on PTCGO. Or there will be lots of people who just want to climb the ladder and they're going to play decks that people don't really want to play against. Like for a long time, Malamar was just massive. Giratina, Spell Tag Malamar. And yes, that was a popular deck, but not nearly as popular as you would have seen on PTCGO. You would expect 60, 70% of decks to be Giratina Malamar. So don't rely on PTCGO to be your guide. So at the time of this recording, if I were to look at Limitless right now, it would be things like Pikarom, Mewtwo Mally. This is going to date this video for sure. Pikarom, Mewtwo Mally, Zacian, ADP in particular. And right now, the Cinccino Mill deck is all the rage. Maybe that will only last for a couple of weeks, but that's what I know that the meta is right now. So I need to account for that in this deck. I need to say, can this deck do well against those decks? So That is knowing the meta. So you know your deck, check. You know the meta. Now, once you know the meta, you need to understand what your matchups are. First off, what are your favorable matchups? So as an example, this Zacian deck. I think this Zacian deck has favorable matchups against many things, especially because you have ADP. The favorable matchups for this deck are going to be, there's some one prizer decks out there that if you're going to take 2 prizes and they cannot get the KOs fast enough, you are very favored in one prizer matchups. Other decks that this might be favorable against, I think this specific build has about a 50-50 with Pikarom. Mewtwo Mally is a potential deck that you're favorable against because once you get set up, you don't really need a ton of cards in hand. Although Mewtwo Mally could be difficult with switches. Anyways, it's not going to be so cut and dry as like you're definitely going to beat this and you're definitely not going to beat this, especially for some of the best decks in format. Those decks don't have such a wide swing, but knowing what matchups you're probably going to be good against and why you're good against them, like knowing that ADP takes prizes quickly, especially against one prizer decks, and then knowing your unfavorable matchups. So an example of an unfavorable matchup is if I was playing against a Ability Zard or a Fire matchup that played Lysander Labs, that would be very unfavorable. So I'm definitely keeping my eye out to see if things like Baby Blacephalon, Ability Zard, Blounds GX, other of those decks are going to be very popular, and if they're going to start playing these labs. If they are, and if they become very popular and playing labs, I mean, that's why I'm playing 2 Chaotic Swells, to be honest, is I expect some people to start countering this deck. But yeah, that would, I think, be an unfavorable matchup if I can't get my frying pans on. So that's the third point. Know your matchups. Know what you're good against and you're not good against. You don't have to know everything, just the most popular decks and how they fare against your deck that you have chosen. I think the next to last point, I should say, for knowledge really, is knowing your tech cards, right? What cards have you put into your deck, if any, that are designed for those specific matchups? For me, I can tell you that this deck has a few tech cards. Like I was saying, a lot of ADP Zacian decks I have not seen running. Let me get this focus up. Chaotic Swell. I don't know why. Labs is your worst enemy. So that's why I run Chaotic Swell instead of Viridian or, I don't know, any other stadium. So in my mind, I consider that a bit of a tech as a safeguard. Another tech would be, let's see here. What's a good tech card? Fion, right? Fion is a wonderful tech card. Focus this up. Fion is a wonderful tech card against a few decks. It's good against any deck playing Doll. So Lily's Pokedoll, you can Fion around it. And it's good against things like Obstagoon, which is going to hit my deck and I won't be able to respond with an attack. Obviously, there are counter techs to this as well, like Stealthy Hood, but I have that in the deck. So if I face one of those decks, I can try to get around it. Another tech that I have is this Wobbuffet, which I have in here for specifically Pikarom and Tapu Koko Prism Star, but it works on Ditto, it works on Victini, it works on Volcanion Prism Star. It will work on a few things, but I've put it in here with the express purpose of trying to negate the Pikarom quick setup. So yeah, I've got space in here for, what is this? 5 different tech cards. And those techs will change depending on the meta. If Pikarom ends up being a deck that is bad for whatever reason, I don't need the Wobbuffet anymore and I can go grab something else. If everybody in an Obstagoon deck starts running Stealthy Hood, maybe I need to put in some sort of an evolution Pokemon like Corviknight in order to just get around the Obstagoon. So, techs change. I think that's the important part. You need to know the core of your deck and how it works, and know what techs you have, and be prepared to change those techs as the meta evolves. Yeah, and then obviously, how do people tech against you? I think Labs is a really big way that somebody might tech against this deck. Outside of that, you know, I don't think there are many other techs against this deck in particular. Yeah. So in terms of knowledge, we're sort of wrapping this up a little bit here. You got to know your deck, know the overall meta, know your matchups, what's favorable, what's unfavorable, how you maybe need to play them, and then know the tech cards that you should think about putting into your deck that change over time. The last thing I will say for knowledge is more of a housekeeping, and it is you need to double check your deck list and your deck before submitting a deck list at a cup or especially a regional. There have been several instances, whether it's because of software glitches or people just, you know, misclicking, of people at regional events being disqualified because their deck list was incorrect. So double check that before you actually submit, and maybe even just write them on paper if you think that the software the organizer is using is not good. And then the second thing is really about triple checking your deck. I say triple check, just check your deck before every match. A lot of the time, if you look at this, this is a plain black dragon shield sleeve, right? Not everybody uses the same sleeves, but these are very popular. There is a possibility that your opponent will have the same sleeves as you and may even be playing a not crazily dissimilar deck to yours. And I've had instances where me and an opponent have accidentally swapped cards because, you know, things happen in a game, you pack up, whatever, and you grab a card, you thought it was yours. You don't even realize it until later on. So check your deck before every match. That way you can know if you are missing a card, if you grab somebody else's card, your opponent's by accident. That's just another housekeeping thing that you could do. So I think that is going to wrap up this first video of Get Good, if you will, all about knowledge, just being prepared. The next video and the ones after that, we'll talk more about specifically playing the game and all of these other principles that go into it. But let me know what you thought about this. If you're excited for this series, hopefully this has been informative. It's a bit of a shot in the dark, but I'm just trying to break everything down for everybody. And in future videos, we'll even have some guests coming on who are certainly more experienced than I am to lend their expertise. But till then, thank you all so much for watching. Check out some of my other videos, subscribe if you like this stuff, and I'll catch you in a future video. Carpe awesome.